and welcome to TiE Bangalore's Charter Member Roundtable series. This is the second in the series. This one is on health tech. We finished one on edtech already, and the next one is on fintech, and we got a whole series after that. So please join TiE Bangalore in these roundtable series. This is also produced by YourStory, and on behalf of YourStory, thanks to all of you for joining us here today. Today we have 4 outstanding speakers to take us through what's happening in the innovation ecosystem of healthcare, what are some opportunities opening up for healthcare startups, and how they can scale and succeed in this space. So without further ado, I'm going to begin with our first question, the first round of general questions for our panelists, and then we get into specific questions after that. Our first speaker up here today is Lakshmi, Dr. Lakshmi. She's the CEO of the Derby Foundation, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what she thinks are some emerging trends for innovation in this space. So Lakshmi, welcome aboard, and let me ask you to start off with telling us what is the scope of innovation in the healthcare sector. It's a very big sector, but from your point of view, what are some innovations in this area?
Sure. Thank you, Madan. I think it's wonderful being here. I think last few years, especially post-pandemic, it's been an eye-opener for all the startups and innovators in the healthcare ecosystem. With huge adoption of technology in the healthcare, there are multiple opportunities. And I would say 90% of India being at the BOP, even small, frugal, incremental innovations can have large impact on the ground. So there's enormous opportunity for creating impact, and innovation can play really a vital role, starting from maybe even diagnostics to point of care devices to telemedicine. I mean, there's enough room to innovate and create an impact.
Fantastic, thanks. Let me turn to our next speaker now. Our next speaker is Vishal. Our next speaker now is Shashi Bhushan, who is the CEO of GTM for Health. He's going to tell us a little bit now from his point of view, what are some innovations in the area of healthcare. Shashi, over to you.
Thanks for having me on this event. The scope of innovation, let me explain it from a framework perspective. You need to understand the value chain in the healthcare system, how it moves from one to another. So if you were to look at it, the first of it is screening, which is the most entry point of any innovation part. From then it moves on to diagnosis, then to treatment, and finally to the rehab care actually. So there's a lot of options or scope for innovation in the screening itself. As we have seen, the longevity of life is now getting better and better. People are expected to live longer. So when you're living longer, naturally an expectation of a healthy life is most important than living longer. So that's where the early screening or screening is one of the most important scope for innovation, because that's also from a business point of view, if I were to say, the top of the funnel. Everyone needs that early screening to make sure that the diseases are caught early. If diseases are caught early, even government benefits, the cost of healthcare goes down, and the kind of continuum of care, you don't need to go to that. That's very important. And I've already seen quite a lot of interesting applications come in for triaging with respect to like oral hygiene, eye care and all. Those are the kind of small things where a lot of things are happening. And triaging is very important, because you don't want to be losing out on wasting resources on the wrong one. So that's one of the large markets, screening devices, point of care, that's one of the scope of innovations.
Great, thanks. Now let's now turn to Chaitra Harsha. Dr. Chaitra Harsha is the joint MD of Vipragen Biosciences. Chaitra, from your point of view, what do you see as some emerging spaces for innovation in healthcare?
Morning, everyone. Yes, I kind of look at it as two aspects. One is health tech and med tech. So, because I come from the life science background, so there are two parts of it. One is at the therapeutic and diagnostic level, wherein where your end user is your patients. So you have health tech wherein a lot of innovations happening, and post-COVID, as Dr. Lakshmi said, it's driving point of care, remote patient care, and making, I would say, even enabling tech into every aspect of it, so that it reaches the patients better. When it comes to medtech, lots been happening, especially in India, on medical devices and robotics, including, Vipragen, we had to get into AI, and tech had to be integrated into the drug discovery, to cater to the larger demand or the innovation, to fit into the innovation scope of things in this sector.
Great, thanks. let's now get into a second round of questions, which is many of our audience is aspiring startups. We also have existing entrepreneurs in this space. Let's begin with the first group, aspiring entrepreneurs. How should they get into this whole space of health, medical sciences, and so on? How should an entrepreneur begin to understand where can I find an opportunity? How do I find a problem to solve?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. In fact, what we have realized, we have been, Derby is a very, very healthcare focused incubator. I think in the last few years, we have supported more than 100 startups in healthcare. So one of the fundamental problems we have realized is the hypothesis validation of these entrepreneurs is very, very preliminary, and they don't go in depth to validate their hypothesis even before building and fine tuning the solution. So if there's an entrepreneur who's interested in solving a healthcare problem, it's very important to understand what is the problem that he or she is trying to solve. Talk to clinicians, get an immersion into the clinical ecosystem. No? For whom are they trying to solve? What is the problem? How is the disease currently being diagnosed and managed? So who's the end user? What are his or her requirements? What are the features of the solution? All these have to be really, really understood before even building a solution or trying to build a solution, I would rather say. Because this validation of the hypothesis is very, very important. And that is one of the reasons where we always say predominantly techies, instead of building the solution alone, they should work very closely with the clinical ecosystem. Now, of course, there's a very small percentage of doctors who are also becoming entrepreneurs, or also trying to build a technology solution. Because all said and done, when you're trying to build a healthcare solution, the clinical aspect is the core. Technology is only an enabler. So it's very important to understand the clinical part and then build. I think today there are immersion opportunities enough in the healthcare ecosystem where for aspiring entrepreneurs, go be a part of the ecosystem. For example, at Derby, we run what is called a customer discovery program. It's a 6 months program where somebody who's trying to build a healthcare solution is given an opportunity to work very closely with clinicians. They could have a problem statement or look at potential problem statement for which solutions can be built.
Great. And in your case, as an entrepreneur yourself, what's your advice to other entrepreneurs on how to get into this space?
Always keep the market at the center. Yeah, a lot of things work out well on XLS or theory or publishing, right? But market is the true reality. Again, as a GTM guy coming, like the way you said, I've been an entrepreneur on one hand as well as on the incubator side, also seen both sides of it. So always anything that you validate, look at it from a market angle. What's the size? Is it a small problem? Because one of the regular mistakes we see in GTM is also that the problem choosing is extremely wrong. Either you choose a wrong market or you choose something which has a very niche market, and those are some of the things. And healthcare is a very long-term game. So when you look at even students for that matter, right? So try to build things that has a mixture of technology along with services. Just selling technology is very, very tough. Unless you embed some kind of a services into your technology, you can't sustain for long, just selling apps or anything like that. So those are my 2 to 3 guidances. Always work from the market, and in fact, we have a program called as GTM Readiness, taking you to the market in GTM for Health. And second one is mix up technology and services to have a better sustainable growth. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Vishal, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Here? Have you met Lakshmi and Shashi? And
Yeah.
Chaitra?
Hi, Lakshmi. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Apologies, I've been going round and round searching
No
for
worries,
a
no
parking.
worries. Happens to all of us. We just got started. So
Sure,
you've
sure.
seen the question flow, right? The basic question.
I have, yes.
Innovation, etc. So we just finished the first one. So we
Okay.
can splice you into the second once we finish this.
Perfect.
So I'll just finish with her, which is the second question.
Sure.
And then ask you those. Yeah. Okay. So now let's turn to Chaitra. Chaitra, in your case, what's your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs on how to get into this space?
So healthcare is a huge sector. Definitely, there's a huge scope for startups. Starting from, as I said, services to screening to the point of care treatments. So one thing for an entrepreneur to get into this sector is to work with all the stakeholders. See, end of the day, private innovation, it has to somewhere get absorbed into public health system. End of the day, if you want to really create a value system in healthcare, it has to get integrated into public healthcare system, because that's where you will not be able to, even if you create an app, you create a telehealth. End of the day, if you do not have the other stakeholders coming into it, say doctors, it is the value chain is not complete. So working and having an awareness of the stakeholders, working with the stakeholders is very, very important. And the second thing is knowing the regulatory systems is also very important. If irrespective of the tech, or you are also looking at services, it could be anything. So the regulatory systems, actually it's very volatile in India, and that awareness is very important for entrepreneurs. You started with some innovation, and within a year that can be redundant, and you're nowhere. So that is, especially in healthcare, it's very important.
Got it, got it. Let's turn now to our other distinguished speaker, Vishal Bali, Executive Chairman of Asia Healthcare Holdings. He was earlier CEO of Fortis Healthcare and Wockhardt Hospitals. So Vishal, my question to you now is, where do you see innovation happening in this area of healthcare? It's such a huge ecosystem. So what are some trends you see? Where's the action happening in terms of innovation?
Yeah, so so let's look at the problem statement, right, Madan, in terms of when you look at healthcare from two contexts: the delivery side of healthcare, which is hospitals, diagnostics, primary care, the entire spectrum of one can say, call it curative health to some extent, and then it's the other end of the spectrum, which is preventive health. I think where the innovation lies today are broadly, again, in two buckets. One, I see there is a possibility of doing a lot more around chronic disease management on the healthcare delivery side of things. India's population of 1.4 billion people, the very fact that chronic diseases is a big component of the Indian healthcare issues. I see a lot that can be done with innovation in terms of how do you address population of citizens who are suffering from specific chronic diseases. That's on one side. Second, I see a innovation to happen even on the front of gender basis healthcare needs. Women's needs are very different from men's needs. Children's needs are very different from infant needs, right? So gender and also age specified healthcare issues. And that, I guess, requires a tremendous amount of thought process, data building in terms of around which age spectrum you need what kind of healthcare services. And so therefore, from a healthcare perspective, that becomes a critical component to do. There are innovative startups which had sort of got into the diabetes space and the endocrinology space. Many of them have not really scaled beyond a point, but I think there is a method over here that needs to be followed through. I think the other side which I see, which is ripe for some degree of innovation, is on the payer side. Just the same way as we have seen on the fintech side or on the finance side of things, fintech contributing a lot more in terms of the financial ecosystem that has got created. Likewise, there is a big opportunity in terms of the way that one looks at health insurance in this country and the opportunity of payer-led innovation. So, which fundamentally derives again from that there are a lot of healthcare technologies, how do you back-end finance to it, and then how do you offer these technologies to enterprises, to individuals. So I think there is a very broad spectrum here of opportunities that lie. Obviously, it is not easy to scale healthcare enterprises in this country because to a very large extent, India's healthcare ecosystem is very targeted towards inpatient healthcare delivery, right? We come from a mindset of the hospital is the place of health. Actually, the hospital is not the place of health. Home is the place of health. And world over, that is getting redefined almost 360 degrees. So, point of care devices, diagnostics, home healthcare has become one of the big stay worldwide, right? Because as you want to reduce the cost of healthcare, where do you start? So I think there are many innovative opportunities that lie here in front of the startup ecosystem. And looking at the overall funding that has also chased health tech startups over the last couple of years. Obviously, there is a summer right now, but I'm sure it all will come back.
Great. Thanks, Vishal, for spelling out those different kinds of spaces, curative, preventive, what's the other one? home versus health, home versus hospital, etc. My next question to you now is how do startups enter this space? So we got a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience. How should they figure out what's a good place for me to get into? How should they scope it out? How to get into this space?
So, one is that if you see the whole startup ecosystem, there is the accelerator programs which are there. You could enter into the space through the accelerator programs. You can house yourself with one of the bigger healthcare provider groups and start working with them and creating some innovative ideas with them. Many of the healthcare enterprises and the groups that are out there today do have that space available where they do sort of want good entrepreneurs to come on board and work with them to create their individual story, right? So I think there are various methodologies through which one can enter the ecosystem. More importantly, I think if one is embedded into or starts their journey inside a healthcare provider group or inside a diagnostic provider group or on a technology side inside a technology group, and starts incubating the idea around what would be most relevant from an offering perspective, and therefore start chiseling your idea of innovation and idea of a startup ecosystem. I think that would be the right way to start.
Great, thanks. We also have many startups who already have products in this space, and their big issue is how to scale up. So my next question to our panel is based maybe on your own experiences also. How does a startup scale up in this space? They've got a product, now they want to ramp up. What do they do?
So as I said, it's a value chain that healthcare really works on. So one has to, I think it is collaborating is the solution. I look at it from the healthcare perspective also and life science perspective also. What we see is the value chain is such that you cannot work alone here, even to release a product into the market. So we all again I would stress on working with the different stakeholders or collaborating with people is something that we look forward.
What would you add to that, Shashi?
Yeah, so what is scaling, right? So that's a context we need to understand in healthcare, because healthcare in my view is a very slow clock speed industry. You need to have a lot of patience, and it's a long-term game also. The most important factor that an entrepreneur needs to build here is trust. The whole thing works on trust, and you just cannot introduce something and just say I have raised funding, I'm going on, right? It goes by the experience you create by your app or your service or your technology. Word of mouth is very powerful in healthcare, and it's a network. You enter the network, you can scale. If you mess up with the network, you go down. That's the way it is. So I would advise entrepreneurs to build complete solutions, ensure great post-sale support for whatever they do, and that's the way. You can still charge a premium for those kind of things. Patience, completeness, post-sale support is the way to scale. And Bharat is a very big thing, right? Don't say I'll be pan-India, etc. You have to go state by state, territory by territory. The way to do it is each disease or each problem has got certain specific regional boundaries. Go in where there is a large amount of needs that match your solution over there. Scale it up first there and then do it. It certainly will not come from the kind of startup kind of stories over there. It's a long game. You have to have that, build that trust. That's the currency in healthcare. Thank you.
So what do you, Vishal, how would you advise startups to scale in this?
So I think I agree with Shashi, and having run healthcare enterprises for a very long time and even today, I think healthcare suffers from two issues. One, at the overall level, we are supply constrained, particularly on clinical and paraclinical talent. So, how does one, in that scarce environment of talent, try and reach out healthcare services to people, right? So, good question from the perspective of there is a scarcity over here. Can your productivity which you do with your ecosystem, does it take care of that scarcity? And so therefore, is there a 10x multiplier around each individual in terms of the productivity that can happen with, say, a clinician or a paraclinical talent? I think the other bigger issue that we often face, and particularly from a startup perspective, what startups generally end up facing is, even though the idea is very innovative, even though there is a large market out there. But what often happens in the Indian context is that whenever there is a self-pay ecosystem, beyond a point, it sort of begins to fall off very quickly. But wherever there is a third-party payer system, it begins to scale up a lot more. Now, world over, when you go around and see, and you know, particularly when, you know, the US is the bed for healthcare startup ecosystem, and there it's primarily, most of the healthcare startups have grown on the back of the health insurance system, or either the private health insurance system, Medicare or Medicaid. So that ecosystem created tons of healthcare startups because there was this dichotomy of the payer does not exist because the payer is already there. There the issue has always been how do you create efficiency of spend, because the insurance reimbursement rates are pretty high, you know, that creates a lot of sustainability, but over a period of time, because they now spend 16% of their GDP on healthcare, all these startups are addressing the entire sustainability, productivity component. I think what therefore, when the Indian startup ecosystem, when they start building their products and services, they have to try and lean back on the insurance ecosystem and see what is it that the insurance ecosystem, which is, you know, it's not that the Indian healthcare insurance system is very deeply penetrated today, but what it requires is what is the insurance wanting to do on the healthcare side. So all the health insurance companies which are there, the private health insurance companies which are there, likewise the public health insurance companies which are there, what are their goals? What is it that they want to do in, you know, with their products over a period of time? And so therefore, how do you tag along with some of those products and therefore go out there and create your scale along with the scale of the health insurance ecosystem? That's truly what has happened even on the financial side, right? So as the entire banking system evolved, as the growth of the banking system evolved, you know, the entire financial ecosystem also grew along with that. So I think that would be the ideal way to sort of gain traction and consistent growth. Otherwise, the tipping point happens very quickly because the number of people who want to do self-pay in this country and be under programs and pay continuously for those programs is a very short, or I think that space is still very narrow.
All right. Thanks, Vishal. In your case, Lakshmi, you've seen the whole spectrum of startups at different stages of growth. So what's your take on how should those with products scale up those products?
Yeah, so I think moment you said scale up, I presume that these startups are in the acceleration stage. They've done with their product, done with the regulatory, they already have some early revenue. So how to scale up further is a question, is my understanding, right? I think there are two things one way looking at is, one is startup, I mean broadly startups are looking at making more revenue. And from point A to maybe multiplier effect of making more revenue, right? So one way of making more revenue is definitely, there are multiple ways. So one of the ways could be probably to bring in some sort of a strategic, I wouldn't say investor, strategic investor / advisor to the organization. See, today what is happening, if there's a startup who's building a solution, there are many allied partners who have interest in the solution. Maybe it could be medtech companies, or could be insurance companies, or could be hospitals. There's a potential huge customer clientele who's interested in a solution. Many of them are also keen on being playing a strategic role with the startup. So that could be brought on, no? That could definitely be one way of accelerating the growth and then scaling up. And I think as Dr. Bali rightly said, no, another thing is most of the healthcare startups feel that it is much easier to go west first and then come back to India. So having said that, there are a lot of cross-border programs today which enable startups to have access to overseas market, no? Maybe through advisors, through mentors, or get embedded into overseas accelerator program, or work with multinational companies. So multiple ways in which startups could accelerate their business by getting overseas access as well. Third thing is, now today also what is happening is there are mature individuals who've been part of this ecosystem, no? Maybe with tech companies or healthcare companies who've been there for 30, 40 years, very strong, very well known, who are now coming out and looking at probable business coaching as an opportunity. Now these are the guys who've been there, done it before, who could really fasten this scaling up for startups. So startups have to keep looking out, maybe onboard some of these guys, and most of them, I think the model is payment for them, in maybe as an equity or percentage of the revenue in case there is a successful transaction coming up. So startups also won't burn up that fast by getting a good business coach also. So there are multiple models, but most of these are real hands-on approaches which startups generally use.
Great, thanks. Let's now turn to, after these general questions to set the context, I want to ask each of you some specific questions about your own companies, your own organizations in this space. So in your case, Chaitra, can you share maybe the story of your company, how you founded, where you are, and what are some lessons you want to share with fellow entrepreneurs?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, I'm a medical graduate and then went into basic sciences and then founded this company called Vipragen Biosciences. So we are part of the drug discovery, preclinical drug discovery value chain. So we cater to a lot of pharma companies in terms of preclinical services. So we have developed proprietary platforms. We develop animal models for before any of these drugs enter the clinical trials, before the US FDA or European regulatory authorities approve these drugs. These have to come in for animal testing, or they have to go through a lot of in vitro assays. So this is a kind of part, we are part of the drug discovery value chain, you can say. We also have few programs running, like we have our own R&D programs running. One of them is in mental health, that is Alzheimer's, drugs for drug molecule, working on a drug molecule in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, along with JNCSR, and wound healing is another aspect. It's a big market for us, especially diabetic wound healing. So these are the two ones which are in the late stage, and the molecule we can probably get into the market in some time after few studies. So yes, Vipragen Biosciences is has a lot of capability in terms of developing cancer cell lines, and now even US FDA has approved for alternate to animal testing. So something called human organoids, wherein you can forego the animal testing and develop organs at the lab, like 3D printing, and these aspects can be inbuilt. So we are also looking at those aspects. We've already started working on those, wherein the data on the human organoids can be accepted by US FDA now, need not be animal testing. See, if you look at vaccines, what happened? We got an emergency approval by the ICMR or WHO to get into clinical trials, even US FDA in fact, right, where the animal testing was foregone. It is actually shortcut was found, directly the vaccines were mRNA, or could be any of those vaccines, got into clinical trials directly. So they are looking at bringing a product to the market, especially in the drug discovery. It takes more than a decade, and an average is a decade, and also the cost of developing a drug. So we are also getting into that aspect. We've been working in this aspect for a long time now, and also, as I said, we need to be aware of the regulatory, what is happening. So since US FDA has approved that human organoids can be used for drug discovery, so we are already there, we're working on it, 3D
Great.
printing.
Any details of the company? How many employees, locations?
So Vipragen Biosciences has about 28,000 square facility in Mysore. So we have a lot of PhDs, veterinarians working. So we have about 70 plus. It's a 70 plus organization. So we've been funded by Karnataka government, the IT venture fund. This was a pre-series that went in. So we are entering into even the US segment. So we have a lot of customers from US too. So this is the stage we are in.
Got it.
A lot of prospects are there for Vipragen to get in.
Great. Shashi, in your case, how did you get the idea? How did you start? Where are you in your journey?
Long story. Let me try to give the context first.
Yeah.
So I'm an engineer by profession. Early days worked on wireless, healthcare, medtech devices. 2012 started Health Micro. Then it was on the early companies focused on LIS and HIS in the cloud kind of a solution over there. And over the next 6 years, we built a fairly good business around 5-6 states, having NABH, NABL labs using our products as such. But of course, for scalability, we couldn't scale. And that's when some of my entrepreneurial moorings got strengthened actually. I've been an engineer all along, but when you are an entrepreneur, you don't have those skills of a marketing, sales and all, right? So trying to sell this huge HIS, LIS has taught me about how to market. At one point, yeah, mistakes happen, but I learned a lot of things by doing the hard way around how to sell these kind of things, building trust in hospitals, labs that are using our products end to end over there. Coming back to 2019, I had kind of toured all over the country, still wasn't finding the scalability. So took a hard call to exit that business. When you have hospitals, labs, you exit it, right? So tough one to do. Everybody wants B2B. A very contrarian call, but anyway, I kind of took that call, and next 6 months we kind of moved out all our customers to other vendors over there. In a way, it was right, but because 6 months later, COVID stuck. Right? So had you been stuck in that COVID in a wrong business, right, it would have been worse actually.
Yeah.
So when you look back, you can connect the dots. So during the COVID and all, I was guiding a lot of medtech and health tech startups on sales marketing, which became my new forte, how to sell products to them. And somewhere along, Wilgrow reached out. I kind of worked with them, led their healthcare practice for close to a year on incubating, investing out there. So there I saw the same problem again, working with several others, the same challenges I had faced of access, problem validation, value props, working with several other incubators. So we're also trying to build a market access platform. So there were several challenges. Hospital access was a challenge. India doesn't have healthcare standards. And large companies, when you approach them, why do we want to partner with us? They say, I want exclusivity. Tough for entrepreneurs to give exclusivity, right? And value propositions are not clear. There's so much competition. And most importantly, you don't know what channel works. Will a dealer distribution work, or feet on street work, or digital channel work? Just dime a dozen channels, right? So that's where the idea of this GTM for health came. So I stepped back from Wilgrow. Wilgrow itself became our first customer, guiding them over there. So it's now been what, 1.5 years now, started Health Macro, the GTM for Health, which is now a business vertical of Health Macro, my previous company. We worked with close to 50 plus startups through our engagements or programs over there. And we are also understanding the space, because never before there was a company focused only on GTM. And everybody tries to do a lot, but can you have a company only on GTM? We are doing it. The jury is still yet to be done. Can we build a large business out of this? So that's the genesis of GTM. There is a problem. Every startup faces. The market is a true reality. Unless you can sell it, no amount of investor funding or having a rock star sales team is going to help. The market has to be done. That is what our focus is on, frankly.
Thanks, Shashi. In your case, Vishal, what are some things you've seen in your journey? You've been wearing many hats, so.
Yeah, Madhu. It's so currently I run this platform called Asia Healthcare Holdings, where we are basically scaling, operating, and growing single specialty healthcare delivery organizations. So the entire thematic view over here was that given the demand-supply gap of healthcare services in the country, and given the fact that in the multi-specialty side, you can only grow that many new hospitals every year, right? Because an average general, 250 beds, 300 beds, 400 bed hospital has a gestation time of almost about 2 to 3 years from the time that you actually identify a real estate to build it. And that's why the industry is so valuable today, because it takes a long time for the scale to happen and also for the incubation to happen. So we thought that there was a space in the overall Indian healthcare delivery context, which is to take out specialties from the large format multi-specialty institutions on a standalone basis. So we started with building out oncology hospitals first. So this was year 2000, FY17, where we took over a company called CTSI, which is called Cancer Treatment Services International. In India, it goes under the name of American Oncology Institute. Grew it from a single hospital in Hyderabad to India's second largest chain of oncology hospitals, about 16 of them, over a 4 or 5 year time frame. Parallelly, we also took majority control of this company called Motherhood Hospitals, which was just 3 hospitals again in FY17. Motherhood is now 22 hospitals around the country. The third company on the platform is an enterprise called Nova IVF, which is in the area of reproductive health. Nova was a company which had been there for a long period of time. It came into the EHH fold in 2019. That time it was 19 centers around the country. Today Nova is at 60 centers in South Asia. So we continue to develop, scale, grow these enterprises across the entire South Asia subcontinent. Big lessons in terms of these were areas which the sector, the industry thought scalability is an issue, right? And there were incumbent players who had been there for a long period of time, who had not really scaled behind many of these specialty or subspecialty areas. So I think the very fact that they've all grown under the AHH umbrella, it means that there is, again, as Shashi was saying, that as you go into the market, what is it that you really do? How do you create consumer demand, and how do you service that consumer demand? So AHH is funded by two very marquee investors. We have TPG Growth and we have GIC of Singapore, who have both committed large amount of capital behind the AHH platform, now to the tune of almost close to about $300 million. So this is a journey. Obviously, in my own private personal hat, I also incubated a home healthcare company called Nightingales, which is here in Bangalore, and then we scaled it to a couple of cities around the country. And many of my lessons around, as I keep saying, on the payer side, is actually looking at that particular enterprise, that knowing fully well that home healthcare is such a big need in our society and in our ecosystem, but the moment it is a self-pay, it takes literally infinite steps for these companies to grow. Obviously, Nightingales has grown phenomenally well over the last few years, but it has taken a lot of energy to sort of grow it to what it is today. So that's really what I do.
Great, thanks Vishal. Again, 3 great lessons for our entrepreneurs. Think regional, global and national at the same time.
Yeah.
Zoom in, deep dive and then scale it up and then combine different kinds of fields together. Think adjacent markets. Fantastic lessons.
Yeah.
In your case, Lakshmi, you're doing everything from incubation, acceleration, students, professionals, everything. What are you doing? What is Derby doing? What can our audience learn from Derby?
Sure. I mean, thank you for this question, because I become so nostalgic when you ask this question. 2009, I think we started an entrepreneurship cell on the campus to support student entrepreneurs. But of course, today Derby no longer works with student entrepreneurs. Having said that, when we started the entrepreneurship cell, I come from a business background. My father was an entrepreneur. Everybody is an entrepreneur in the family. Probably that question kept ticking, how do I sustain the e-cell? So every time I didn't want to go back to management asking for money to run the center. So I think 2010 is where I first got the grant from DST to set up a center to support student innovators, student entrepreneurs. Very small money, I think it was about $1 lakh per student team per year. Very, very small money. But again, the fact is that you don't need big money to run incubation or entrepreneurship activities. We did very well and we were recommended for a full-fledged TBI. See, for me personally, Derby is my startup as an incubator. How do I build and scale it up? So 2015 is when we established Derby as a Section 8 company by the Dayanand Sagar Group. I think it's a very classic story of an intrapreneurship within an organization. Because the whole initiative was from me, so there's complete freedom given to me from the management to run it. And I think we've been very fortunate to have a very good advisory board. So all people from the ecosystem are there on the board and absolutely no interference from the institution to run the incubator. So 2015, I think we started as an IoT AI incubator because those were the buzzwords those days. But then quickly we realized that, even from the first day, we had a lot of startups who applied for our program, startups from the ecosystem. As I said earlier, I think oldest entrepreneur was about 68 years old who got into our program. So when there are mature individuals who come into our incubation, it's a good news and also a bad news because there's a lot of pressure on the incubator to deliver. Because most of them have given up huge opportunity cost, they have family to maintain, children to maintain, a lot of demand from the entrepreneurs themselves. And early on we realized that we cannot satisfy entrepreneurs in different verticals. Because there was an industrial IoT entrepreneur, there was somebody in NetTech, somebody from banking, all kinds of demands of validation, investment and all that. I think 2018, again we went back to the board and asked what should Derby be doing, having done some work of incubation, acceleration, blah, blah, all that. So one of the questions one of the board members asked was, Lakshmi, what is your vision for Derby? Do you want Derby to be an incubator 10 years down the line doing all kinds of stuff in multiple verticals, or you want to be known as the best incubator in the country for healthcare. Because we also did a lot of homework on what are the areas we should look at. No? I mean, we also had to bank on the strength of the host institution itself. I think I would proudly say probably Dayanand Sagar is the only institution in the country to have an in-house incubator with a hospital attached. I think that time we had only our Sagar hospitals which was there. Now as we talk, I think we have everything in healthcare. We have a medical school which is CDCSO certified for clinical trials. We have physiotherapy, dental, nursing, everything. So having said that, no, though we knew that, two reasons. One is we had our strength in healthcare, and we knew that, as Shashi mentioned earlier, no, healthcare is a long gestation, a lot of struggle. So we wanted to support startups who have a longer gestation period and handhold them well. So that was the reason we got into healthcare. So having supported, I think we have supported about 100 plus startups in healthcare. But we have also understood, as I said, no, we always introspect and we have the room for experimentation at Derby. So we keep experimenting, keep pivoting what we do at Derby also. So we have done the usual incubation, acceleration, pre-incubation, all this stuff. So now we've realized something unique we should do. So now we are rather venturing into a venture studio model. Yeah, I think where we have now got specific problem statement from maybe some interested party. Now currently we are working with one hospital who said they're looking at an ultrasound based vein detection, low cost patch or a device, because vein detection is a problem for multiple segments, be it pediatric or geriatric or obese people. So then incubator here plays a pivotal role in anchoring this whole co-creation opportunity. So there's a clinical partner, there's a technology guy, there's this one startup founder who may be interested in building this. Then incubator itself puts in some small money to start off this whole process and supports this whole endeavor so that everybody gets, because there is some way forward for the whole venture way forward, right? So that's the thought process here.
Great, thanks. So we've covered a lot of ground in terms of business models for startups to look at, how to do scope out the domain, how to get in, how to scale, etc. Let's focus now on the inner journey of the entrepreneur. So my next question to all of you is about the leadership qualities of an entrepreneur. So in the healthcare space, obviously you have to think health first, but you also have to think of business, you must think of regulation, you must think of technology. So this leads to a lot of complexities for one individual to match. So how does a leader build qualities of success, of professional excellence, innovation in this space? Lakshmi, you want to start?
Sure. I think generally we say entrepreneurship is a marathon and healthcare entrepreneurship is a longer marathon. I think stamina, perseverance are really, really key, number one. And I think, very important for any entrepreneur is to keep the team together. I think as I said earlier on, I see myself also as an entrepreneur running the incubation program, right? So it's very important, one, to keep the team together. And most of the times, all these entrepreneurs have a big dream, but most of the times it is empty pockets. But still enable the entire team to see the big dream, keep the passion alive, take them together. I think that's very, very important for an entrepreneur. And I think as a startup entrepreneur, the organizations have to be very, very flat. That means everybody in the startup should know what is happening with the startup. Should be on the same page always. I think that's very important. I think this is one of the key factors which what I believe.
Vishal, you've been in very large organizations as well. What's the leadership mandate? How does one become a leader, become a better leader, become the best leader?
I think obviously, good leaders are the ones who also have clarity of their own vision and the path in which they want to grow their companies. More importantly, I think for good entrepreneurship, I guess one of the key component of self-value is agility. Because when you don't have enough capital, but you have a great idea, you need to keep maneuvering that idea in different ways, in different spectrum, and try multiple ways in which you can create that scale. So agility of your thought process, agility of execution, agility of your teams, and how you manage your teams, I guess is the one that really helps in growing these businesses a lot more. And from an entrepreneur perspective, I think that's very important. Also, India is a complex country to grow your businesses in. While we have had a great run in terms of the kind of investor interest that we have seen in the country behind healthcare enterprises, but for the number of ideas which are there and the number of entrepreneurs which are there and the number of companies that have got started to the number of companies that have got funded on a sequential basis, the fall rate is very, very high. So effectively that means that if there is one company that is getting funded, there are probably 25 which are not getting funded. So the ability to also manage failure is a very important entrepreneurial trait. And I think those who become serial entrepreneurs are the ones who also manage their failures right, and have understood from their failures or have understood from the environments that they have lived through that the next idea could actually be a very successful one, even if one has failed. So back again on the agility thought process, that the more agile you are in your thinking, both success and failure go hand in hand together.
Great, thanks Vishal. Shashi, you mentioned briefly your own journey from an engineer to an entrepreneur, from a big field to a slice of that field, etc. So how would you say your leadership journey evolved in your space?
So one is self-awareness. The most important part are the reflections, because you will be seeing a lot of things. Sometimes you kind of create some context for a story, bada market hai, etc. Right? So that's something entrepreneurs, we all dream, we all keep thinking around it. But you need to have those milestones around how long will this go on, how long will I handle this, and what's my plan B up to plan Z also. Because you can't be stuck in it forever. So that self-awareness, self-reflection, this is bad, I better get out of this. That's also a very important task. Because you can build products, you can market it, but you have to have that ability to reflect, saying this can scale up or this cannot scale up, and what the time to exit. So when I say quit or something, and sometimes what happens is this word of quit or pivot is taken in a wrong way. Oh, I should not be doing, etc. That's a very, very important entrepreneurial quality for you to have a second innings. If you do not have that, you will burn yourself out and go in a wrong direction, and for an ego or whatever it is. That's an important thing. Second one I would say is, to add on to Vishal's stuff, a continual learning things. When you start off an entrepreneurial stuff, right, you need to be getting aligned with multiple ecosystems, multiple communities, because you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes get to learn, oh, this is actually fitting into something here. I did not know that, but I was looking for it. So you have to be a networker and a continual learner, and then the rest is all part of it, your jobs, let's say technology or marketing and sales. But on top of it, if I were to say self-awareness, reflection, continual learner are the three things you need to do.
Great. In your case, Chaitra, can you share some of your own leadership journeys in your part?
Yes, being a serial entrepreneur, so the first thing is, I think, learning from your failures. So unless you fail, you can never be a good leader, I can say. Second thing is multitasking. I'm not a tech person, but when I want to adopt technology into make my product or service better, I need to know what is happening. It's not that I can't depend on anyone else. So a good leader is one who really knows from bottom up in your team what is happening, and that multitasking is so important. And the third thing is being aware, being adaptable. You call it agility, or being adaptable to the environment, because especially the healthcare system is so volatile. What's happening today may be redundant in a couple of months or years. You never know. So you need to be on your toes, be aware of what's happening around, and then quickly adapt to the system is very, very important to be a good leader.
Great, thanks. Let's now turn to the broader healthcare space, which is the whole overall ecosystem. So a lot of entrepreneurs begin with the sort of almost very blind eye kind of focus, but how should they open up and see the broader healthcare ecosystem? So they need to know, as you mentioned earlier, the payer, the government regulation, you talked about that earlier. So how should a founder do ecosystem mapping? How should they create some of their own pieces of the ecosystem? Like some startups launch their own competitions, their own challenges, their own leadership awards for people in the space, etc. So how do you embed in the ecosystem and create your own components of the ecosystem to grow the startup? Can you share maybe some examples from your case?
Yeah, the first thing is, who's going to pay for this? This consumer-driven, market it is. So you always need to be aware of that. You have to start from there. I think the first thing Dr. Lakshmi mentioned is the tech people working with clinicians is so important in healthcare. To bringing them together in your team, having that perspective of what is the problem statement that you're looking at and what is the solution for that is so important. So working, if you do not have that in your team, how do you work with that system? How do you bring it in? You know, there are a lot of constraints for you, you know, getting that the perspective to your to make your product better or service better. So there are a lot of energies going in creating these kind of ecosystems. I think working together definitely is helping the healthcare providers and the startups, in fact.
Okay. Shashi, what about you? How did you learn about the ecosystem? What do you do to create your own set of spaces for
First
engaging?
is your own awareness of where you are in the ecosystem. As I said earlier, there are 4 parts. Are you a screening part, diagnosis, treatment, or a rehab? Where are you situated? And then look at your adjacent spaces, because you know something slows from perhaps a screening to a diagnosis of your middle treatment over there. How do you kind of create some kind of a synergy such that what you create moves into the next one, or something flows input into you is also a thing. So look at your neighboring ecosystem providers over there. Third one I would say is talk to people who are providing those services. Let's say if it's a lab or a hospital, real things on the owner's perspective, or a lab diagnostics perspective. Third I would say is learn the parts. In fact, when I was doing health macro, I started learning about NABH, NABL. Actually, I went to become a trainer also. I could not practice because I'm not a doctor. That gives you some more insight. So these are some things that are not there well, which we can add value. So it will be continually learning this. Last and most importantly, attend trade shows, attend big events. That's there are lots of them happening. And you need to invest some time, once a quarter at least, to go to that, to understand who else is there. Your competitors will be there, your co-competitors will be there. So many things are there. This is the way to learn, real practical, being in the field, being in the trade shows.
Great tips. Go to trade shows, learn from adjacent markets.
Yeah.
Vishal, what did you add? How should entrepreneurs
So I
keep
think
learning?
the way that I see the evolution around the healthcare ecosystem and obviously the entire startup revolution that is out there. Actually, the future of healthcare is not being created by medicine; it is being created by engineering. And I think that's really what is creating scale, right? Because it is the entire influence of engineering on medicine, on, one can say, chemistry and biology, which is actually creating the multiplier effect of the new ideation or the new innovation. So I think, in my mind, the biggest vision that an entrepreneur should have around scale is to see as to what are the factors that will create the scale behind his idea. So it could be a clinician, but he needs to have an engineer with him who can help him scale what is the core idea, which may be around something to do with clinical sciences. So I think this interplay of multiple, one can say multiple sciences at work is the one which really an entrepreneurship or an entrepreneur should be very, very coherent with, because that is the interplay, the teamwork, the ability to bring this synergy together to create that scale behind your idea cannot really happen if you get infatuated only with your science. And I see that a lot. With some entrepreneurs, they just get so infatuated with their own idea that they have an absolute inability to see what others can bring to them to help them grow and scale. And so that openness with which you need to see the world, and as you rightly said, that the openness with which you see what else is happening in your ecosystem and who will provide you the tailwind to grow, could be diametrically opposite to the thought that you had and the science that you started with.
Correct. Multiple ecosystems. In your case, Lakshmi, you also working with different kinds of ecosystems, government, academia, incubators, accelerators. So how does all this come together for an entrepreneur? And what are you seeing entrepreneurs doing to expand their own ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, there are two things. One is an entrepreneur being a part of an ecosystem to improve his overall revenue or to grow his business. Other one is entrepreneur being a part of the ecosystem to just give back and have the feeling of giving back to the ecosystem, which also gave him at some point of time, right? So two things. One is, starting from small things, maybe hiring interns or working with younger folks, where it could also lead to some innovation which could also enhance your portfolio at some point of time. That could be one. or keeping your eyes and ears open, to work with fellow entrepreneurs, fellow startups, because always there's something complementary which both of you can bring to the table. I think recently there was a very interesting article, 6 founders of 6 companies somewhere in Kerala dissolved all the 6 companies, they became one because they had complementary skills. So there are complementary skills that each of you can bring to the table, then why compete? No. I mean, if entrepreneur should be open to ideas like that, that's the first thing, right? Second thing is, I think as Shashi mentioned, the entrepreneur should also be brand ambassador for his own company. So make some noise around, around your company, build a brand. That will also help you build a brand. So in that perspective, be a part of any PR activity, maybe award functions or association-led activities. Today, as I was telling you early on, I think startup has become a tick mark for everybody. Be it corporations, be it associations, be it investors, everybody wants to be on the startup bandwagon, I would say. Maybe entrepreneurs should also drive on this, and be felt, have your presence wherever it is required. And another interesting, as I was mentioning earlier, the venture studio model. Now, even at the incubator, accelerator, we are reaching out to mature Indian startups, saying, are you looking at potentially value add or increasing your product portfolio, but you have no time, you don't want to spend time and resource on that now? Maybe you can look at, can you help us identify a specific problem statement where we could work on the venture studio model? You could mentor these entrepreneurs now. Maybe that could lead to a part of your portfolio at some point of time. That's also another interesting way of engaging with the ecosystem without actually spending money.
Another very serious issue in this whole healthcare space obviously is governance. So without naming names, there have been many cases in the media reported of fraud, overinflation of numbers, corruption, etc. So how should a founder make sure that they stay on the right side of the law? How can a board of directors, etc., help them? What should they do in terms of ethical practices, sounding boards, things of that sort to get this way? Any thoughts on how we can build a solid foundation for governance right from the early stages in the journey?
I mean, this is irrespective of the vertical, right? Whether it's healthcare or any business you do, I think ethics has to be the core, right? I think ideal way to build a startup, according to me, is by being bootstrapped. Whether it has its own limitations, the way you scale and all that. Moment you bring in a investor money or some money, there's a lot of pressure on the startup to grow. I think that is where, to be very frank, the whole problem also snowballs. Where they try to, the manipulation, all this happens, I think entrepreneurs should be very clear that business has to grow only by revenue. That's very, very important. I mean, cannot grow by investment. How long will you keep the bubble up? I mean, it has to grow by revenue. So the entrepreneur has to understand what are the ways and means of growing his business by revenue. Then obviously investors also would be happy, right? If you are able to grow your business by revenue. I think that's the best way to ethically grow any business.
Okay. How about boards of directors and things of that sort? How would those help?
Well, definitely it would help, right? I mean, in fact, we are talking about, even for incubators, for example. So today, I would say 99% of the incubators in academic campuses are government funded, whether it's central government or state funded. And invariably, because it is set up in an academic campus, most of the academic people who are behind the educational institutions are on the board of directors of a Section 8 company. Today, government is mandating that even those Section 8 companies, those academic host institutions are a part of the board of directors, they should bring in neutral people into the board. So even for incubators now it is being mandated that you bring in people from the ecosystem who can be on the board so that incubators are also run ethically. So this whole good even for startups as well.
In your case, Vishal, you've seen a lot of issues in this space. How does one keep that governance?
So I think number one, ethics above all else is very critical. Scale is a function of your business. Scale cannot be a function of your funding. And many times, when many startups get overfunded at a very early stage, that also creates a lot of issues because they have not tested scale as yet, but they have got overfunded far before they have proven their business model. And that's what creates this entire governance issue in terms of now how do I I have raised so much of capital, now how do I show that, yeah, I'm worth all the capital that I have raised? And I think that's when you start beginning to compromise ethics in your business. So irrespective of whether you're small, big, medium, I think having ethical compliance in terms of the way that you grow your business has to be a foundational approach. Now it's, obviously you can't have a heavy hitting board that a much bigger company would have. But in your own way, right from the beginning, you may want to create a small little board which is of your friends who have sort of run bigger businesses. You bring them on board as advisors, make them board members, but follow the approach of a board-led organization, right? Because that will also give you the opportunity, at least once a quarter, to do in a more formal way how your business is doing. You'll get feedback. Now, you're not a publicly listed company, so you don't have to divulge all those details and things like that. But more importantly, it gives you the opportunity every quarter to sort of sit in front of a bunch of people and debate around your business, which when you go down the investing path, you have to do with your investors. Right? So once your business gets invested, obviously then you have a structure by way of which you are then constantly engaging with your investors and telling them about your business. But if you're not ready with that thought process, then that first round of massive funding that you get, or even small funding that you get, and the compliance that comes along with it, you're never ready for it. So I think that makes a lot of difference in terms of starting with a structure. Now, everybody says that the way to start things is to be scruffy, and if you have an idea, just go out there and think about it. But I think then you must lead that life for some time. But the moment you're ready, even with your seed capital, you have to put your governance in place, because that discipline will take you through the next many decades of your company.
In your case, Shashi, how did you approach this whole question of ethics, value statements in the company, and then board and so on?
So one is, as an entrepreneur, I also was not so knowledgeable on all aspects of finance. Right? So I took time to understand every aspect of it, because you can just sign on some sheet and go on, but at the end, long term, you have to be understanding each part. So every entrepreneur needs to, invest himself in understanding what the balance sheet is, what are this, what are that. It comes over a period of time. There are books, you can talk to auditor, learn from different sources. That itself is a big, a foundation for you to know what you're doing is the right thing. Second one is extreme high degree of transparency, whether the results look bad, good, whatever it is, right? Just do not make it look good, whatever it is, right? So be transparent on that, so that you're always having one news over there. And if the news is bad, take the right calls, what I was talking about on the self-awareness and integrity part over there. Yes, you can have others to review your stuff, give you ideas, guidance as to how to scale and other things over there. But it's a simple thing. It's just if you align with that, it scales up. As long as the foundation is strong, nothing you need better than that.
In your case, Chaitra, what did you do to make sure everything stays on board?
Yes, as an entrepreneur, early on, we were really scattered, in terms of the legal aspects, because every entrepreneur faces these issues in terms of signing. When you collaborate with someone, you sign few papers. You're not really, whom to approach. Kind of, these are the things. It's not even finance. It's about legal aspects of it where we really stumble. So that's wherein we figured out that having one is building a proper documentation within your organization, however small you are. Legal aspect of it, that was very important, because in order to scale, in order to get into other markets, this was very important for us. So we looked at a couple of things. One is building our board. It's need not be a board of directors, but board of advisors. To enter US market or European market, the entire ecosystem is very different there. So however you work, there definitely will be a gap. So we have gotten a few of those advisory board members from different sectors, not even sectors, so the different markets. So that's really adding value to us, and there's a lot of learning in terms of collaborations. Other thing in life science sector is that auditing happens, time to time auditing, and we have certain called as regulatory certifications. Like for hospitals, you have NABH and NABL. You have good lab practices, GMP practices, wherein it's very important, because most of the companies that we work abroad, there will be a virtual deals happen. So they really don't come and audit. It will be a virtual audit happens. So if you are not well documented on your legal aspects, on your entire the compliances basically, if you are not good at it, you will not move ahead at all in your business. That is, you know, to scale up, that's very important for us. And investors, what my learning is, yes, you need to be extremely careful with somebody who has to not just bring money, but who can add value. If not add value, but give a lot of freedom to you and you know, stick to your vision is very important.
Good. Let's go back to that investors question a bit more. Many of the founders in this space are either techies or clinicians, doctors, etc. Not many of them know about the whole VC venture capital dynamics angle of the healthcare space. So how did you learn about all these investor relation management? What's your advice to all the entrepreneurs out there? How to manage investors, how to learn about them, how to choose the right investor maybe?
So it's a very tricky thing when to go for investments and how much to you know, get in, right? So initially we started with, you know, bootstrapping ourselves and then getting family and friends. I think that's a real good way wherein you have at least the trust from your family and friends, and they really wait for you to grow. There's no stress on entrepreneurs. I think these are the aspects which will bog you down for an entrepreneur. The investors or whoever is invested in the time that, because life science and healthcare, you know, it has a long gestation period. Somebody who's invested in you has to wait for a long time to even to see a product coming out or even to see the revenues. So it comes with an some amount of experience, you know, when to get proper investments and what kind of investors to come in. I think VCs and PEs should be the last option, I would say, till you are sure of your product, your market, and you're there, you're proven yourself. Then you should look at the investors.
Shashi, what did you do to deal with investors?
It was a family friend kind of thing that we raised it actually. So that has sustained us for some time, and now, right now in the GTM for health, it's fully bootstrapped. Right now we have not raised anything over there. We are looking at customer revenues as a real investment. We're working towards that. That's it.
Vishal, what are your tips on money management? How should founders look at angels, VCs, PE firms, government grants, and so on?
Yeah, so there's a wide spectrum of capital raising, right? From how much capital do you raise in the journey of your company, at what intervals of time, and at what maturity cycle of your organization. And having that discipline, I think, matters a lot, because choosing an investor is not just a function of how much capital an investor can put behind your company, but choosing an investor even at an early stage, even when you raise money from your friends and family. I think it's very important what beyond capital can they also give you, because if you are a young entrepreneur who's just starting off with a very good idea, you also need the knowledge of maturity, and that comes from experienced individuals. Now they could be somewhere in your family, they could be in your friend circle, they could be your uncle and aunts, but you have to choose the right person, right? It is not just that there is a very rich uncle of mine and I can raise 25 lakhs from him, so here it is. But does he have anything else to offer you beyond his money? And I think that is a very critical component as you start the journey. Because obviously it starts with, you know, first bootstrapping, then your seed capital, then your series A, B, C, as you continuously move up. And when you are ready for a more organized investor, which is probably your seed investor or also your first venture capital investor, you have to have a meeting of the mind with that investor. Because many times people jump in by looking at the color of dollars that will come into their bank account behind their company. But they don't know whether, from a mindset perspective, they will have a wavelength with their investor in the way that their investor thinks and in the way that you as an entrepreneur think. And until and unless there is a meeting of those minds, you may go wrong very quickly. Because obviously every investor has a very different approach to growing their business. And you know, some are very happy just providing you capital. Others are very happy providing you capital and knowledge. And third group is where they provide you capital and knowledge, but they also then literally start governing your company or running your enterprise. And if you as an entrepreneur are not willing to take that approach, and you have taken that capital, you may have gone wrong tremendously. So I think it's very important that in the pecking order of your own priorities, what is it that you seek from an investor? And then you should go for that class of investors. Many investors have a very deep pool of knowledge in terms of how they grow their companies, how they bring advisors, how they bring the entire ecosystem behind your company, how they bring even people who have run larger enterprises in the past as a part of their ecosystem. So you can then call upon those individuals as not just for capital, but also for consistent knowledge, for consistent inputs, for consistent, as I keep saying, debating around your model and how your business is growing. And that for an entrepreneur is very, very critical. So, it's about that maturity of knowledge that comes along with capital, which you should seek. And then, you have the right mix of your idea, of the right amount of capital, because also I think sometimes companies get over-invested too soon, which is also not right, because you may have put together a great business plan which acquires millions of dollars of funding, and you are then ready to sort of dilute yourself right in the beginning for the complete amount of dollars that come in. That also may not be the right approach. So this is a science, and raising capital is actually a science. It is not just putting a business plan on paper and then going after investors. So it's very important for entrepreneurs to learn the science and to manage themselves most appropriately with their investors.
Fantastic. Vishal. Lakshmi, any thoughts on
Sure.
investing as a science, art, craft, all of the above?
No, in fact, I have dual challenges. One is to raise capital for my own incubator and to raise capital for my startups as well. So it's a bifold challenge, right? And see, I think when we started initially, we were funded by one program of Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. But as we are talking now, I think we are funded by all the programs of DST, MEITI, Invest India, Government of Karnataka also. So I think wherever there's a government program to support incubators, I would say go with a begging bowl. Because that is how Derby would grow, right? I mean, that is how startups would also get benefited. And second thing which has also happened in the last few years is CSR opportunities are also opening for incubators. Now, as a not-for-profit, we are also eligible for CSR fund, which we have also got in the last few years to support startups. And then we again don't want to play the usual role. It's even when, working with corporates is a totally different ball game as working with governments, because you'll have to make a real convincing pitch to corporates as to why should they give the CSR to you, right? What is the value prop? Now, one thing we have also realized is if we are going by our own thesis of going with a defined problem statement to solve a problem. Now, our proposal to corporates is if you are particular about a particular geography, let us identify a problem statement. Throw open the problem statement to innovators. We will catch a bunch of innovators, tech innovators who will build solution. Incubators ready to handhold them for 2-3 years, help build a solution and deploy it in the community. I think that's a huge value add for everybody, right? So that's one part. Second part is working with startups, raising money for startups is also a challenge, right? I firmly believe that as students do well, a university does well. As startups do well, an incubator does well. It's a common baseline, right? So for startups to do well, to work with investors, initial years when Derby's value prop itself was not very clear, we had our own struggle of bringing in investors to us. I think as you're talking, we work with about 20-25 investors. We've invested in about 25 startups now. I think in the last 2 years of our investment, I would say not very big money, but whatever we've invested, it's doubled in the last 2 years. And out of the 25 investments we have made, 16 of them have got a follow-on funding or a co-investment along with us. See, incubator again, is a very, very, I would say, operational intensive job. You have to really walk the talk. Startups usually work in the 6th gear. I would say incubators at least have to work in the 5th gear. So the efficiency has to be very, very sharp. If you do that, investors would definitely come back to you. Now, many investors have come back to us saying there are a lot of portfolio startups which are in healthcare. Would Derby want to accelerate? Can you support them with faster clinical trials? Can you support them with more clinician support? Now we have put up a separate clinician mentor panel. There are about 25 clinicians across various hospitals who are ready to pro bono work with startups, help them go deeper and see how this can be done. I think you should have something to offer to the investors when they come. That's very clear, whether it's government or whatever. And as somebody who's pitching to an investor for yourself or for your startups, you should understand what is the other person expecting from you. So one size doesn't fit all.
Got it.
Yeah, that has to be very clearly done.
So we got just a few minutes left. My next question is going to be about obviously the pandemic era. Now a lot of people say we're in the post-pandemic phase, etc. What has been the pandemic impact on the healthcare sector beyond the obvious things like vaccines and all that? What else has opened up, and how has people's mindsets changed? What are new opportunities that startups should look at in a post-pandemic world?
I think for Derby personally, it was, I think the pandemic was an eye-opener for us. I think 2019 end is where we really started going deeper into healthcare. So we realized that a lot more could be done on healthcare, leveraging technology. In fact, when the lockdown happened, we did a lot of webinars, brought in top guys in healthcare to talk to startups, be it clinicians, doctors, investors. So that was a very good turning point for us. Of course, many of the startups have now understood that technology doesn't mean solving only problems of the pandemic. Because if there's because many startups started doing this, they were building solutions for COVID. So COVID is not going to last long, right? But the startup has to last long. So that startups have also understood now. But I think the pandemic has opened up a lot of opportunities for everybody to understand how technology can play a very, very important role. And as Indians, I think we are very good at embracing technology. See, for example, pre-COVID, not many monetization, digital transactions were happening through mobile, right? Today, from your Sabziwala to everybody, people embrace technology so well. The same thing will happen for healthcare in the next few years down the line. I think startups should see that and then start putting things in place. There are huge opportunities for doing.
Great, thanks. So Vishal, what has been the pandemic spike in this sector and what is tapering off now?
Yeah, so a couple of things, Madan. I mean, like for example, as the physical world shut down, the virtual world opened up. And the virtual world opened up on the back of technology, as as Lakshmi said, that this is really the world that sort of got created very quickly in terms of the digital healthcare offerings. So whether it is teleconsultation, telemedicine, remote care, all of this just opened up and proliferated during the pandemic time. And I think the industry has almost pivoted itself to using technology as what was always the back-ended infra support to a front-end consumer offering. And that whole pivot has come on the back of the COVID pandemic, and which I think will stay with the industry forever now. So I think that's one in terms of how that has changed. The second thing which has happened is a couple of businesses and services sort of went through the roof, right? Diagnostics, for example. And that was basically because almost everybody was getting, pathology tested, this whole COVID testing thing. That led to a massive uptick in terms of pathology, and which I think has tapered off, and which reflects in the valuation of all the large companies today, right? All the valuations are down fundamentally because that massive spike of testing has sort of reduced. Thirdly, I think what I think is the biggest takeaway, this is an industry where technology has not been adopted for many, many years at the pace at which it should have been. Unlike many of the other sectors which have used technology to scale, to pivot, to grow, I think healthcare is a very slow adopter of technology. And that is the way that the whole ecosystem functions, right? Because if a clinician does not want to use an EMR in his office, he will not use it. He will still continue to write on paper. But I think the COVID pandemic has brought about a certain amount of that change, where everybody has woken up to the idea that if we do not adopt technology, probably we will not grow fast enough, which is a very positive change. Obviously, this also demands continuity. And as I can see that the virtual care ecosystems that had got created during the COVID time are now again going back, because clinicians are turning around and saying, oh, I might as well see this person physically. Why should I do a teleconsult with this individual? Right? Because it's the old mindset coming back all over again, which I think has to taper off, because once you have started the journey of using technology for your consumers, you have to continue that path and make it into a part of a living organism, right? It has to grow inside your enterprise. So this entire digital playbook, which happened on the back of the pandemic, should continue inside healthcare enterprises. And that's again where startup ecosystems or startups can bring many new offerings in play as far as digital healthcare is concerned.
Great, thanks. Shashi, in your case, what's been the
So
pandemic
let me
driver?
build on what the other two panelists have already said. First, we all know digital went through the roof and suddenly it's coming down because of the tapering of things happening over there. See, for any change in a human behavior to happen, it has to be a little intra-generational, intergenerational. See, we have seen visiting hospitals, clinics to using the services clinically, online, right? So the next one is the one that will actually uptake this whole thing because they have kind of been born with it, seen that kind of thing. So they will be faster adopters of this technology because for us, there's a reluctance to go and see the doctor over there. Second one I would say is, along with the regular teleconsult and other things that kind of boomed up, there is also excellent opportunity to kind of make a lot of healthcare practices safe. For example, surgery and other things over there, make it virtual, make it kind of online kind of thing, so that the outcomes are much more successful over there. Today, medical colleges still use very old technologies over there. If you have a virtual or AR, VR kind of thing, you can ensure there's a faster learning as well as the outcomes are much better. So that's the other part of the pandemic, I would say. And next generation of medical doctors coming out of clinical or medical colleges would be more adapt to using those things rather than the regular classroom kind of thing. So the regular ones still go on in a digital consult, but there are lots of opportunities on the educational stuff to improve actually.
Great. And in your case, Chaitra, how did the pandemic impact your?
Yeah, I mean, my own story. So we are, as I said, preclinicals, right? So the pandemic really shut down the preclinical research completely, and the focus was always, we shifted to clinical trials. So it came to a point where we thought, okay, we might have to shut down, and if this continues for a year or so. But yes, we are entrepreneurs. We had to quickly adapt to the change. So what we did was we developed our own RT-PCR kit. We kind of, this is we call it Jugaad, right? We entrepreneurs we believe in Jugaad. So we quickly collaborated with IIT Delhi and we brought in our own RT-PCR kit. It was a product development. We are a service company, but we could do that. And it was into the market, right? This is the first thing. But we could sustain for somehow we could sustain this this period, but opportunities really opened up after that, and there's a huge, I would call it as redefining of the market itself. So we always thought, even for it applies to the healthcare, we always thought, okay, Europe or US is the market for everything, but it redefines that India is the market for the healthcare startups. That was redefining of the market, I can say. So for example, if you look at patenting and you go check the records, even we, in fact, when we patented we filed the patent, we always focused on US and Europe next. And India, we are like, okay, it's okay, we'll come back. We started with it, but it's okay. But now the focus is, even your IT attorneys would say, IP attorneys would say that there is more filing here in India than anywhere else. And if you just take telehealth, I also have worked with one of the telehealth companies. India is a place where the end-to-end telehealth was executed during pandemic. I think it's one of the examples in healthcare. US, they thought, okay, they are very quick to adapt to our technology, we existed there, but doctors couldn't get adopted to telehealth and give the service. But here in India, they could complete the chain from access to having doctors at the other end, which was missing in India. And we always, as all of them said, the technology is something was there, but we never adopted it. But doctors were made to adopt in India, and that is a success factor, I would say. And it opened up a huge opportunity. And if, as somebody said, can sustain, the startups can sustain it, there's an opportunity exists in India, nowhere else, I could say.
Wow.
Not US.
Right here.
And now the opportunities have come for clinical trials. Yes, there was a time when the clinical trials coming to India actually dropped down because of trust factor, ethics, and a lot of things. But then now they see that the kind of population, every age group that we have, ours is the best. In terms of the young population, pediatric population, aging population, you take any age group, this is the best place for clinical trials. So opportunities have started flowing in, and in billions. So
Wow.
that's
Great.
an opportunity post-pandemic, in fact.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we're almost out of time now. My last question for each one of you is, what is it about healthcare that excites you so much? Why are you in this space and not any other space? And what is it about this passion that you think other entrepreneurs can also get if they get into the healthcare space?
I think it's as I said, it's quite volatile. It's happening place. You know, education and healthcare is always in demand. There is always a demand-supply gap compared to any other sector. So the opportunities are huge. So as I said, you know, we entrepreneurs can get adapted to and, you know, make probably be successful in any aspect of healthcare if, you know, if you are able to build in a product or a service in that. So those are the
Actually, you're an engineer. What attracted you so much to healthcare, and why you still
I
in this
think
space?
it's to do with the human thing. You're touching people's health, lives with your services, with your products. What more can be more important than that, right? That's what excites me about that.
Vishal, you've been here for a long time in this space. What excites you to stay here?
I think it's the opportunity to scale. So while it is always challenging, but you know, once you've reached a tipping point, from there the growth accelerates a lot more. So you know, if you are able to manage the challenges of the first 4 or 5 years, then you know there is a great opportunity of scale that this country offers, and obviously because of the massive domestic consumption that we have, which is only growing by the years, compared to some of the other countries where, you know, consumption patterns are changing, but the scalability sort of just peaks off very, very quickly. So I think that's the biggest one. And obviously I think the second more important one is that the impact that you make on humanity, which is, you know, you just give life and you save lives.
Probably adding on to all they said, no, about life, importance and all that. One fundamental thing is we wanted to play on our core strength. And I think as an incubator, we felt healthcare is a good area because with the host institutions, Dayanand Sagar background in health, we felt we could be a good differentiator, number one. Number two, all that we talk about, AI, IoT, all that, but still India, the masses, the bottom of the pyramid, 90% above don't have access to primary health. I think through ABDM, government initiative, all that, if health can be given, no, the basic health support can be given, leveraging technology. I mean, at scale is possible only for health. I think that's an interesting and good game also to be in.
Great. And just to wrap up, what should an audience reach out to you for? If an audience wants to get in touch with you, what can they expect if they get in touch with you?
Any support, anything around innovation, healthcare, we are happy to support.
To incubate, accelerate?
Anything, you know, whether it's startups or corporates or anybody who want to work with us, our doors are always open because we always believe firmly in the faith of working together. Relationships are important, no? And this whole ecosystem is all about collaborating.
Great. Vishal, what did you offer, give for a startup?
No, so if there is anybody who has an idea and wants to debate that idea, wants to understand what could be potential opportunities and pitfalls around that idea, they are happy to reach out to us. At AHH, we also constantly look at engaging with top class talent, which can bring new ideation to work for us even within our enterprises. So if there is a good group of people, we can also do acqui-hires of you know, bringing them on board and working with them, and at the same time giving them the independence to grow their idea.
Fantastic. Shashi?
Building products for India. Second one, and most important, is selling products in India. That's what GTM for Health does, right? So we work with startups, incubators in taking their products to market through readiness or through GTM services. That's what entrepreneurs can reach us out.
And in your case, Chaitra, what can
So
startups?
always love, happy to share my experience and mentor startups, which we are already doing through TiE Women's Cell. We kind of mentor, more than 15-20 women entrepreneurs we support and on various aspects through every year. So I want to continue to do that.
Great, thanks. Thanks everyone. With that, we come to the end of our second Charter Member Roundtable series by TiE Bangalore, this time focusing on the healthcare sector. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks especially to our speakers over here today, Chaitra, Lakshmi, Shashi and Vishal. Thank you all very much. And we wish all of you in the audience all the best. Please do connect with TiE Bangalore, with YourStory and all our speakers for all your needs in the healthcare sector. Thank you. Good luck.
initiative from TiE to bring all of us from different sectors together and to help the entrepreneur ecosystem to take away some learnings from this session. It's also good to have different subgroups so that they are all able to offer their own learnings, their own experiences, which I think to the entrepreneurs through TiE is probably the biggest value add that we can offer. So from that context, I think this session should be very useful to the entire entrepreneurial community over here. And on the healthcare front, I think there's just so much to be done. And today's session actually showed very clearly that there is a lot more that the ecosystem needs to do.
This roundtable was a wonderful initiative of TiE Bangalore and YourStory. Interestingly, I think I got a holistic perspective of multiple stakeholders, investors, entrepreneur, GTM enabler. I think it was a very lot of insights into the whole ecosystem, how it works. I think in unison, there's a huge opportunity for healthcare startups, specifically in India, who are building solutions for India and for the world at large. I think very good initiative. Look forward for more initiatives like this where we can collaborate and also strengthen the ecosystem.
Any ecosystem is incomplete without the like-minded people coming together and working together. So that's what is required for a successful ecosystem to thrive and nurture the startups. So today was one such event wherein the like-minded people across the areas within the healthcare sector, investors, enablers, incubators, and along with enablers like even TiE and YourStory, I think they've come together to give this opportunity wherein we all brainstormed about a lot of aspects, challenges, opportunities, and the scope for the startups to thrive in this area. So it was a wonderful event, roundtable event.
TiE Bangalore and YourStory for this setting up this roundtable. Amazing discussion amongst different ecosystem players to look at areas to growth, areas to collaborate, and this has also a lot of takeaways for the budding entrepreneurs. And we also kind of as panelists looked at different areas we could collaborate and take it forward. A lot of work to be done on the healthcare ecosystem. Thanks once again for TiE Bangalore and YourStory for arranging this. Thank you.